You, without knowing, you already anticipated my my follow-up question actually, because I can imagine that SMEs are not that easy to engage. So could you shed some light, the both on you, on which obstacles you are facing to engage SMEs? Jan, maybe you can start again.
Yes, I can, but I heard this morning already so many things about Gabriele and Clemens, and they mentioned almost everything that all the problems there can be. So yeah, one of the things I found out myself already a few times is that the energy bill is not a major concern of most SMEs, and that indeed the cost of materials and personnel is 100 times higher. So the major concern of the SMEs is attracting clients and keep them happy, and attracting personnel and keep them happy. And if sustainability can strengthen these challenges, then there is a way in. Then you can start talking about energy, but not as the first thing you start with. So then, therefore, it's always good if you approach a company or you are approached by a company to understand with whom you are talking, and where the main focus of sustainability lays in the company. So is it somebody who is responsible for environmental compliance, or is it a bit higher? Is it about marketing, green marketing, or maybe HR, research and development, or on the top, really the strategic long-term vision of the company? And also when we were talking about energy audits this morning, the cost of the audit becomes less important the higher up you are within the hierarchy of the company. For the guy who is responsible for environmental compliance, it might be a huge budget, but if you're embedding it within HR, for instance, then it's just a small cost.
It's peanuts. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Camille, what's your perspective on this?
Yeah, no, I agree with Jan that a lot has been said already this morning, and especially the point regarding the narrative, the change, the transition in the narrative is necessary to make SMEs understand really that it's not necessarily just a question of cutting costs or a legal obligation sometimes, but that it's also they should perceive it as a strategic decision to improve the value proposition to the customers, really. So I totally agree with that. But yeah, of course, until that happens, I would say we still stumble on the few barriers, which are the lack of time, the lack of human resources, the lack of financial resources, and sometimes even when there is financial resources, SMEs don't want to be bothered with the administrative burden of, for example, subsidies and that kind of stuff. So that's really like, we see it all the time also with the projects, even with bigger corporates. We see that people just don't tend to see it as their first full-on priority, and that they lack of interest to look beyond those stumbling blocks and to look on a longer term strategy. So yes, the change of narrative is for sure necessary, but we also should, and I speak for myself when I say that as a Brussels Chamber of Commerce as well, to help them paving the way to the different opportunities there are there, because SMEs don't tend to be as informed as bigger companies with regards to the innovative and sustainable concepts and models that exist. When we look, for example, at the opportunities when you mutualize certain things. So SMEs still look much at ownership in general, but there's a lot of opportunities with the sharing economy. There's a lot of opportunities with the circular economy. There's interesting concepts such as what is done in nature, what can you do with biomimicry, all that kind of different stuff that's stuff that we as a Chamber of Commerce that we want to introduce those concepts to SMEs, and that's also what we do with information sessions, etc., and that kind of stuff. But we also want to help them with the legislation. So, for example, I was talking about the National Energy and Climate Plan. By 2030, the regional government of Brussels, at least, confirmed that it will only support SMEs that can integrate circular concepts into their business model to apply for public tenders, for example. So there is a big bargaining. I don't know how to say, like buyer power for the public sector that is interesting for SMEs to really comply to those different criteria. But the same exists for certifications. Like, for example, for the construction sector, we have the BREEAM certification, but we also have EMAS certification, which all of you know here, of course, which also allow companies and SMEs to apply for public tenders at the level of the European Commission, for example. So there's a lot to be done also by the public sector for SMEs to be willing to comply to this to this legislation. So I think that's also what I'm talking about here is also a part of the solution, I would say.
Yeah. So it's clear that the narrative is a key element, and changing that narrative, showing the benefits of that transition is important, and that the cities have an opportunity through local regulations to engage SMEs into a more, let's say, compliance-driven way to move them forward.